Flying Lotus, you're dead. Uh-oh, we have a disclaimer. I'm going to be talking about death a lot in this video, so if that's something that's going to cause an existential crisis for you, I would skip this video. Death has been a center point of human society since its earliest days, and for good reason. For many people, it represents a very mysterious and often scary aspect of life. As soon as human brains started making increasingly emotional connections to other human brains, they really started to think about what happens after death. The simplest explanation, that death is simply an unceremonious halt of biological processes, wasn't really cutting it, especially at a time when humans didn't really have a scientific understanding of their body's inner workings. There had to be more to life than that, right? We had to be more interesting than that. Out of this aversion and uncertainty regarding death, among other things, came superstition and religion, including burial rituals and various versions of the afterlife. And these ideas served a couple of purposes. In particular, these ideas served to fill in the blanks of early humans' lack of understanding about themselves and the world around them, including death. These concepts have stood the test of time, obviously. They gained traction early on due to the compelling nature and a sort of lack of alternative thought, and they were sustained very effectively by practitioners in various ways. Yeah, I'm simplifying the history of religion that much, but really that's not important right now. Anyway, here we are today, after all this time, and we still haven't come to a consensus of what happens after we die, despite our best efforts and numerous theories. It's not really something that can be investigated, you know? You can't die and then take measurements and then come back to report it, you know? This makes death a very effective artistic subject since it evokes such a wild imagination for a lot of people and makes them explore areas of their brain that they don't really venture into very often. For this video, I'll be assuming the role of your guide, leading you through your own transition to the afterlife as described by Flying Lotus. You're dead! I'm sorry, you're dead. That sucks. I'll give you a minute to collect yourself. The sustained, droning intro of this song is the initial sense of disorientation upon transitioning. You were just on Earth, in your home, or walking outside perhaps, but now you're here, and you don't know where here is. Your mind's a little fuzzy, your vision's blurry. Okay, now once your head starts to clear, you're gonna start freaking out. Don't be embarrassed, it happens to everyone. And this freak out is realized in the music as the noisy wave of sound transitions into anxious, swirling jazz, led by Kamasi Washington's intense saxophone playing. Flying Lotus isn't alone in creating this artistic representation of death. This song features some of his notable fellow harbingers. We have Thundercat, who is a frequent Flying Lotus collaborator, who is absolutely shredding on bass. He pops up on most of the tracks on the album. Thundercat has been a relatively prominent figure in the jazzy and psychedelic corner of modern hip-hop and soul, providing his bass for Kendrick Lamar, Travis Scott, Erykah Badu, and Mac Miller, among others. Thundercat has also worked with the modern jazz legend Kamasi Washington on many of his projects. To me, Thundercat represents one of the strong contemporary links between jazz, funk, and hip-hop, and I consider him a quintessential bassist of the modern era. And Flying Lotus himself is known for his own recognizable brand of off-kilter, jazzy, and psychedelic hip-hop production, so he and Thundercat make a very effective pairing. Herbie Hancock is on this track as well. Yeah, that Herbie Hancock. I guess that shouldn't be too surprising considering the dude has been pretty consistently active in the music industry since 1961. He's basically a household name as a legendary jazz keyboardist, but I feel like a lot of people nowadays, myself included, aren't very familiar with all of his contributions to music. One of these days I'm going to do a deep dive into Herbie Hancock's immense body of work. Now Flying Lotus, whose real name is Stephen Ellison, is actually the great nephew of jazz pianist Alice Coltrane, who herself was married to John Coltrane. So he has got jazz in his blood, for sure. The assorted noodling from Thundercat and Herbie on this track are supported by up-tempo drumming from, I believe, D'Antoni Parks. It's a very flurried song. The percussion offers a somewhat steady footing, but the melodies and harmonization from the other instrumentation never really stabilizes. As the anxiety brought on by your recent demise reaches its climax, you start to feel the first inklings of composure. Kamasi Washington's saxophone glides above the crashing noise of cymbals and snare rolls in an effort to draw you back into sanity. By the end of the song, everything seems pretty chill. You're definitely looking a lot better. Okay, just a heads up. Things are going to get a little strange after this point. As you continue to acclimate to your new reality, you're going to go through some changes. Your reality isn't bound by earthly limits anymore, and you need to be prepared for that. Think of this song as like the elevator music of the afterlife. Your transcendence will begin shortly. All right, so before we proceed any further, it's important that you embrace your fate and all that. Look, you're not gonna undie, and trust me, you don't want that anyway. So you need to accept this process, and you should take this time to tie up any cognitive loose ends that might be bothering you. We can't be transitioning you while your stuff's all unresolved, now can we? Kendrick Lamar acts as an orator on the song, describing mixed feelings about death. Has he left a strong legacy? Will other people reach the bar that he thinks he's set? Kendrick has one of my favorite vocal deliveries in the current hip-hop sphere, and his thoughtful and intricate lyrics add a lot to the song. You see, your life on Earth is over, and all that's left of you back there is like the idea of you. What kind of mark have you left on the world? How long will people remember you? And for what reasons? Now, I really hope that this isn't the first time you've seriously considered all of this, because if it is, we might run into some problems later on during our final evaluation on where to send you, if you catch my drift. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You're fine. Lighten up. But I will need to know how you died for our records. You were shot in the head? Gee, okay. Not ideal. But I suppose it was over quick. Like on our list of ways to die, it's pretty... Hey, you okay? Hey. Hey, you there? You're giving me that 1,000-yard stare again. You know what? It doesn't matter what happened. I was just curious. I'm sorry. You're looking a little wonky, though. Why don't we take a break? Get you some water or something. In addition to being an acronym for the song's title, DMT is an acronym for a naturally occurring chemical known to cause intense hallucinations when ingested. The relatively short trip brought on by dimethyltryptamine has been associated with out-of-body experiences and a complete detachment from reality. The psychedelic nature of the drug no doubt influenced the album art here. There's a theory that the reason DMT is naturally produced in the human body is so that it can be released into the brain upon death, providing a person with a psychedelic distraction as their brain shuts down, although this hasn't been confirmed. In fact, there's no scientific consensus on why or how DMT is naturally produced. And there are also people who think that harnessing DMT could open doorways into other planes of existence, but I don't know about any of that. Believe what you want. The point is, this song is trippy. On the credits for this song, you'll see that a Captain Murphy is featured. Captain Murphy is Flying Lotus. It's like an alter ego. It took me way too long to figure that out. Captain Murphy and Flying Lotus do their best to musically simulate the feeling of being shot in the head over a bass line that is almost certainly a nod to the original Tetris tune. And I've never been shot in the head. But I can imagine that this is what it might be like. The beat is off kilter and warped. The vocals are slurred and almost nonsensical. The whole song is just like kind of confusing, like my brain's not working right. Captain Murphy mentions hanging out with some deceased influences on this song. Freddie Mercury, Jay Dilla, and Austin Peralta. Who do you think you'll be chilling with in the afterlife? And Snoop Dogg pops in as well to once again remind you that you are in fact dead. And if I'm comparing his feature to Kendrick Lamar's feature, and maybe I shouldn't, Snoop's appearance is a little underwhelming. So this is my favorite instrumental track on the album. Flying Lotus did an interview with OK Player in which he gave a short description of the creative process or the meaning behind each track of this album. Turkey Dog Coma is the most intricate song according to him due to the number of recorded tracks that are smashed together here. There are two distinct parts to this song. The first is like an up-tempo, guitar-driven electronic jazz fusion sounding bit that trails off near the middle of the track. The second part of the song is what I like to call speedy Weather Channel music, and I really don't mean anything bad by that. The way the jerky drumming meshes with the saxophone and the background synth ambience creates a very ethereal atmosphere. It's just a shame that this part of the song is so short. And really, that's one of my only issues with this album. A lot of the ideas are really cool, but very few of them feel like they've fully been expanded. Most of the tracks on this album are really short, and I feel like some potential was left on the cutting room floor. Flying Lotus got his start doing bumper music for Adult Swim, so he's no stranger to bite-sized textural tracks. And this talent transfers well to this sort of concept album, but I just wish he would have developed some of the tracks here a little more. Fun fact about this little interlude, he wrote it with Jeff Lynne. No, not that Jeff Lynne. Another Jeff Lynne. Although that got me thinking about an ELO Flying Lotus collab, I could only imagine the beautiful mess that would erupt from that project. Cronus, a very notable Greek god associated with time and crop cycles, is often depicted holding a scythe, much like the most common personification of death, also referred to as the Grim Reaper. When the Grim Reaper is depicted in art or other media, it's usually something to be frightened of. It has come to collect the life it was sent for, to matter-of-factly remove you from your physical body. Now, there are some notable examples of people outsmarting or bargaining with death, but in its purest form, there's no arguing with the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper isn't really evil, though. Not in my mind, at least. It simply has a job to do. And further, if you've come to grips with your own mortality and if you've accepted your end, the Grim Reaper can represent relief and a welcome transition to whatever comes next. This song is a beautiful representation of personified death. Flying Lotus incorporates huge, layered vocals led by Nikki Randa to create an echoey gospel choir effect. One of my favorite lyrical points on the album is on this song when Death says, "My hand's been bloody since the day I came. It's such a shame you've seen my violent side." Since death is so often associated with violence and tragedy, it's natural to think of death as a universally bad thing. Continuing the references to Greek mythology, sirens are beings who lure people to their death by singing beautiful songs that cause sailors to drive their boats into rocks. Some interpretations of this myth say that if this lure is unsuccessful, the sirens themselves die. So it's just like bad news all around. This song is a representation of a siren song, not surprisingly, with Angel Deridorian of Dirty Projectors fame assuming the role of the siren. It's quite a nice song, featuring alluring yet unsettling production. Again though, I just wish that this song was a lot longer than it is. Although if it had gone on long enough, I might have driven my car into a ravine or something, so maybe it's for the best. Turtles All the Way Down is an expression referring to infinite progression, specifically that the Earth is being supported by an infinite series of turtles. Sort of a strange metaphor, but it claims that Earth is just the first node in an infinite system. For some context, this idea has its roots in the Hindu, Chinese, and Native American religious concepts of a world turtle who carries the Earth on its back. Applying this idea to the concept of death, you may have left the Earth, but maybe that stage is just one step of infinite existence. What do you think your next step is? Unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for you. It's complicated. Our time together is limited. You'll pass through this interim phase shortly on to whatever comes next for you. You may feel scared about what's on the other side of that door. Sorry, but things are going to get even weirder. You're going to see ghosts. You're going to feel like you're losing control as your mind morphs into something not yet familiar. This track and the next two are meant to provide further atmosphere as you step closer to the next plane of existence. Getting some cool jungly vibes from this song. Like many of the shorter tracks here, it dissolves before really fully developing. This is another one of my favorite instrumental tracks. Herbie's on keys, Kamasi's on sax, really driving percussion as well. I really appreciate Kamasi's inclusion on this album in general. His saxophone adds really smooth melodic lines over the unsettling and sometimes ambiguous harmonies from the keys and the frantic bass lines. And then Thundercat pops in and treats us to some sufficiently creepy vocals as he describes a descent into madness. Now, upon death, any untreated darkness in your soul may envelop you. This has the potential to change your afterlife trajectory, so ideally you would have addressed this during your life. And a note to my live folks out there who might have darkness in their soul, don't keep the darkness bottled up. Talk to someone, you know? I know there's a stigma that's kind of difficult to overcome, that like talking about that stuff can be like admitting you have some sort of mental shortcoming or that you're weird. But seriously, a lot of people are going through the same stuff. You aren't alone, and there are ways of making it better. So this is where the sequencing of the album kind of throws me for a loop, at least for the purposes of my interpretation. I feel like this track and the next track would have been more beneficial to the flow of the album if they appeared earlier on the track list. I'm thinking like after Dead Man's Tetris and Turkey Dog Coma, they could have added to the momentum of the narrative at that point. And here's some more creepy vocals, this time courtesy of Captain Murphy. This song seems to be an ode to an overdose. The lyrics mention Xanax, Percocet, and other highly abusable prescription medication, which have seen a pretty sustained surge in fatalities in recent years due to their very high toxicity, their extremely addictive nature, and their frankly appalling ease of access brought on by irresponsible pharmaceutical marketing campaigns. I'm sure everyone at least knows someone who is struggling with an addiction of this sort. A lot of you watching may also know someone who has died as a result. Overcoming an addiction like this involves a lot of physical and mental pain, and I sincerely hope anyone struggling can get out of it alive. The final three tracks on this album are pretty similar to each other. The warbly, aimless synth that opens up obligatory cadence transitions into chill, atmospheric instrumentals with textural backing vocals as this album comes to an end with Your Potential, / The Beyond, and The Protest. And here is where we must part ways and you must complete your transition. Don't get me wrong, I would love to go with you, but I'm not allowed to, seeing as, you know, I'm still alive. Honestly, I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a morbid curiosity for what happens after death. That isn't to say I'm like rushing to find out or anything. I'm perfectly happy with where I'm at, so to speak. May you rest in peace. This album is a wild ride. The diverse musical journey that Flying Lotus creates around this morbid concept is a key factor in what keeps this album relevant for me, because it would be super easy to make an album about death and have every song be stereotypically dirgy and depressing, but Flying Lotus comes at this concept from multiple angles. Sure, some songs are dark, but others are quite upbeat and, dare I say, optimistic. I'm a huge fan of the production work as well, which is good since that's really the main selling point of Flying Lotus. He is able to create these otherworldly sounds and then just melt them together in an unbelievably compelling way. The instrumentation is great. Kamasi Washington, Thundercat, Herbie Hancock, and the others really nailed their roles. The features are solid, although I probably would have enjoyed more rap features, assuming they would be on par with Kendrick's appearance. Really, my only issue with the album is twofold, I suppose. The album is too short, and a lot of the songs are too short. And to be honest, that's far from the worst gripe I can have with an album. Anyway, shout out to Human Mortality, the great equalizer. I understand that I can't do this album justice just by sitting here and talking about it, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Thanks for listening.